Love
Ready?
it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Steve Couper's podcast for aspiring real estate investors. In each episode, I try to bring a guest that's going to be either a subject matter expert or another investor with some experience that she's got and that they can share uh, with the benefit or providing benefit to all of you. So today, I'm super excited. My guest today is an accomplished business executive, a certified real estate investment advisor. She's got a long list here for me. She's got over 20 years of investing experience in over two countries, anyhow, three. Um, she's um, she's been recognized by the ISSA International with their Leadership Award for Empowering Women. I think you know who I'm talking about now. Her motto is building for tomorrow while living for today and providing clean, safe housing for her tenants. Deanna Boyden is living life by design. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a superpower. I've known her for several years now, and I can't wait to share her story with you. Deanna, what did I get wrong?
Amazing. I'm so happy to be here. We've been talking about doing this for so long, and I tip my hat to you, sir, for starting this. The dedication to the community and producing these shows is amazing. So thank you for giving back to everyone who's either just starting or continuing to learn after 20 some years like I am.
Well, thank you so
So
much, Deanna. That's very kind of you to say so. Deanna,
yeah.
I had a lot to say in a short amount of time as I introduced you, but there's so much more to you. What's going on? What have you got in work right now? And tell us about your story.
Yeah. Well, we're typical accidental investors,
Hmm.
right? We ended up, our first property ever was a mobile home, and we did some improvements to it and we made some money on it, which you never tend to do with mobiles. And that kind of ignited in us. But we were also kids who just had a dream that at some point in time we'd have three or four homes and move around between them, and we get to live that lifestyle right now, which is absolutely amazing. And I always love to tell people, if a couple of kids from small town Alberta can do this, anybody can do this. So we started in the typical fashion, one or two rentals. We built a house, so we kept the one we were living in and rented it out, did everything wrong, rented a property manager who took all of our money and showed us what not to do, all of those great lessons. And we just sort of kept going. And yeah, we invest across Canada. We're in large scale development now. We're active and passive in the United States. And we've got three ventures down in the Caribbean. So it has been a crazy ride. We've done almost every strategy you can imagine
That's very
over
exciting.
the years. Yeah,
You've tried it all. What's your favorite?
we have. Oh, I love creating spaces where memories can be made.
Hmm.
So I always love a good renovation into a vacation property where I get to decorate it too. Love that. But I also love the multifamilies that we're in that we'll never see. Where we have a great team on the ground looking after it, people who know exactly what they're doing, and we put the money in to help them buy it, and they put the money back in our bank account every so often. So there are many ways to do real estate. We've always been active and passive,
Okay.
which I think if you're doing both sides of the equation, if you're doing the work as well as investing with others, you understand both sides of the coin. And I think that makes you a lot stronger as an investor on both, because you understand, if you have partners or investors, you understand what they're looking for. On the other side, if you have been an active investor, if you understand how to do the due diligence on a new market, on a new strategy, you're more likely to invest in stronger projects and understand your own risk profile with that. If it's something like development where the timelines can get stretched, if you've done any rezoning, you understand how easily timelines can be impacted through no fault of your own. So I think that working on both sides of the coin has allowed us to be better on the opposite side.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to what you said about land development and timelines. It's really something. And it's amazing to me how different these timelines can be if you're in different provinces. I was speaking to somebody here in BC, and they were just coming out of a meeting where timelines here, municipalities hold it 2 to 4 years to try and get the zoning approved as changes come through. And we just came back from being in Edmonton, where I think 3 to 6 months is typical, right? So what a
Yeah.
drastic change. And imagine that you've got dollars tied up for that 4 year period. How can you make money in land development strategies in a province that holds you for ransom, more or less, for that long a time?
I
I'm
was
appalled
I
by
was
it.
going to say it. Yeah, I was going to say you're held hostage. It's interesting because I worked with CMHC, and I literally was just talking with a former colleague. He's still there, and we were talking about the risk that developers take on this because you sit down with your pro forma and your project and your investors and your rendering. You get that all in order, and then you have to go for financing. So that's a huge risk at the beginning. And, one project we've been in, the rules on the financing have changed 2 or 3 times before you even get to rendering,
Yeah.
right? And that is really quite concerning. I think when at one point, uh, as things started to drop off in Ontario, I'd heard that there were 100 projects stalled out in GTA.
Yeah.
And you understand why. There are people who perhaps kept a little powder dry. They've got deeper pockets. They can just stop and wait until they know what's going on. I know a lot of us were changing drawings
Yeah.
when the rules changed around sustainability
Had to,
and
right?
those points. Yes, so you quickly change. So there's a big challenge there on that. But having the three levels of government at odds sometimes.
Mm.
And in the lower mainland, I think the greatest example there is that LRT expansion. And it was going through 6 municipalities. Just getting those municipalities all in line at the same time was hard enough. You'd finally get one to say yes, and then the next one would have a change of government and they'd be back to no. That's just the municipal level. And you still have the provincial and the federal. So I'm hoping. We always hear these things. We recently had a speech from the throne
Yep.
where they talked about some of this, but certainly cutting through the red tape on that. I know Ontario has tried, the current government there. You know, I, I don't know if it's the right moves. I'll let people who are neck deep in it in Ontario speak to that, but the levels of government, if they aligned, could create a much clearer path to creating housing.
It could create a much clearer path and a much more affordable housing solution at the end, because the developer that's holding all of those costs for all that period of time has to flow that down to the builder, has to flow it down to when you're buying a home, you're paying for all of that.
That's
It's
right.
the home buyer that loses out at the end, and the cost of living
That's
here is
right.
outrageous, and now you can understand why. So very,
Yes, if you're sitting on, 2 to 3 acres of land, depending on where it is, that can be close to, 6 figures a month
mhm.
just in holding costs, right? And then you're looking at maybe you're putting in utilities, power poles, building a road, all of those things as you go along. And then all of a sudden you get held up by red tape. Those costs get passed on to the end user, whether that's someone who's buying it, renters, whatever the case may be. So I agree with you. I think, I believe in housing solutions that are safe and clean. I worked at CMHC. The tagline is safe, clean, affordable housing
Yeah.
there. Um, and the fact that, we have young people coming out that just expect the bank of mom and dad are going to have to give them a down payment to buy a condo
Yep.
is probably not the Canadian dream that you and I grew up with.
No, it's slightly different. Slightly different.
Yes.
Mind you,
Yeah.
my first home, it's an interesting story. My first home was a bit of a surprise. I wound up in the middle of New Brunswick and in a place called in Oromocto, just outside of Gagetown. I was in the military, and I was posted there after 5 years in Germany. I had $3,000 to my name in Canada Savings Bond, and I went to a realtor and I asked the realtor, "What can I buy with this? Because I don't want to live in these married quarters anymore. I want to buy a house. What have you got?" And she said, "Well, let me look around." And she came back and she took me out to this century farmhouse in the middle of New Brunswick, which I bought. It's on 2 acres. I bought this for $27,500. Now, it's a few years ago, and that $3,000 didn't go any further. That was all it could get.
Yep.
But there we are. So, the bank of mom and dad. Well, no, it was the bank of Steve, and you
That's
found a
right.
solution. So this was created. Then I sold that house for twice what I paid for it 4 years later. After building a garage and painting everything, it was an experience. It was a skill building experience, and something I
Yeah.
like to look back on as a my introduction into real estate. The ability to learn you
I
can
love
make a bit
that.
of money there, right? You can
Yes.
and you can do it if you set your mind to it, right? And you can still buy a
That's
house in
right.
Canada for less than $100,000.
I
Just
was just
not,
going to say, we
yeah,
went on a little spree and we bought three during COVID. We kind of wanted to show that we could do it. We bought three in 3 months that were under 100 grand.
right?
Um, and one of them was, $42,000. We had no idea what we were going to do with this thing. And our two sons came and worked on it with us.
There you go.
And they surprised me with how much they knew. But they also learned to put up light fixtures and ceiling fans, which I just think is a life skill that everyone should
Everybody,
have.
everybody needs to
Yes,
know how.
that's right.
Good on them.
And that little one showed us, actually, our son used his line of credit for the reno fees. So we spent about 15,000 on the reno and returned him a check for $20,000 a month later when we sold it.
That's it.
And it really sort of sparked that in him as well.
Yeah.
And I think we never get too far away from that sort of value add either.
Yeah.
We're doing some of that stuff right now, and I love it. I love the design and, knocking out a few walls and creating new homes
Yeah.
for people out of these buildings, saving some of them. But the century homes, yeah, we've actually, that little guy was 1912 vintage as well. And they present all sorts of opportunity and challenges, don't they?
All kinds, all kinds. You don't know what you're going to find behind wall number one.
Probably not a square corner, that's for sure.
No storage, anyhow.
That's
So,
right. But I
but
love the point that you don't need a huge amount of money still to get started and go, do a project or two like that,
yeah,
stack up a little bit of money, um, get on to your next one. I always plug team slow and steady
there you go.
because it works.
Yep. Yeah. So imagine, if you will, that you've got 20 years plus of experience in this field. Imagine you were at the starting line and you wanted to get into real estate now. How would you proceed? What would you do if you were just starting green right now?
I think the biggest thing that I didn't realize when we started was there were the three components of time, money, and knowledge. And you have a certain amount of each of those will shift.
Mhm.
And so when you're young, you might have a lot of time, you might have very little knowledge, you may or may not have money. You don't have to pick a strategy that you're going to follow forever.
Mhm.
So you can shift through those things. The other two that I like to add on to that are the opportunities that are in front of you and your own sort of skill set, which may be a little different than knowledge. And I think that I would tell people, I see so many people that as I coach and mentor people with analysis by paralysis, they're trying to get it perfect. And I say, look, you don't have to hit a home run, just get on base.
Mhm.
So that might be house hacking. where you buy a condo and rent out a bedroom to somebody and generate some income that you start saving up. You also learn how to be a bit of a landlord then. It might be short-term rental. It might be arbitrage in a short-term rental where you rent it from someone. Approach an investor who's got a property. We have someone who we love that they do arbitrage out of our unit.
Mhm.
We can go buy properties knowing that we already have a lease in place for a certain amount.
Yeah.
That's also a great tip for people. If you're looking to get your first property and you're having a hard time qualifying, if you walk in there with that lease for someone who is going to do arbitrage in your property, then you're set. So I think there are some really good strategies to get started on the active side. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid of some hard work, or if you invest passively, make sure to ask a lot of questions so that you're learning as you go.
Yeah, there's so much truth there. There are no bad
Yeah.
questions. There's no bad.
Right. No, and you can do different things like maybe like our son, you provide the renovation money for a flip and then show up there on weekends, not just demo day for the fun of that, but maybe you show up, offer to run to Home Depot. Somebody's always got to run to Home Depot, right?
Mhm.
But you'll be learning, work alongside the trades. I literally was just with some trades and I ask a lot of questions. There's always something new,
Yeah.
right? There's difference in building codes and building types. We're in an area here where sometimes um, the way that they build things is just different.
Yeah.
And so ask those questions, find out why. If you're in, if you don't understand or you've moved, someone who has moved from wherever, from Germany to New Brunswick, they're going to do things differently in New Brunswick. So ask those questions and you'll learn so much. Also, don't be hard on yourself. Um, if you're not buying a property, keep track of all the things that you are doing because those are accomplishments. I had a conversation not long ago with someone who said, I haven't done anything in a year. And I said, that is BS. Here are the things I know that you did. I know you went and you found a great realtor. I know you found 2 properties to put offers on. I know that you found a lender. I know that you spoke to 3 or 4 people about being partners. I know that you put a ghost ad out to find out how much rent there was. Just because she hadn't actually bought a property, neither of those offers went through, doesn't mean she hadn't accomplished anything.
So true. So very true. It's amazing how far a person can grow in the course of a year and yet feel like they haven't done what they wanted to, right? But there's so
Yeah.
much if you look behind you that you've grown. That's what is it all? Look, the person you become, I think, is as you go through
Yes.
this, right? So you're becoming somebody different with every one of those steps. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you often don't realize that growth
No.
until you look back. So I always tell people, when you create your to-do list or your plan, don't take the items off of there. Just sort of leave them there. And as you cross them off, in those moments that are hard or that you're having a hard time with your mindset, you can look over at that list of things that you've done and realize, hey, I'm a rock star,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
To look at that, I like to put a little box beside every one of those things on my list that I want to get done, and that it's some kind of endorphin rush or something that comes along every time I check one of those off. It makes me feel better. Um,
That's right.
Deanna, there's a lot of risk in real estate investing. There are a lot of things that people need to be cautious of or aware of so that they're putting in place either the right kind of buffers or they're keeping their eyes open so that they're aware that they can come along. As you manage and have grown through real estate investing, managing those risks, is that something that you've got a process you follow, or is it something that you've just learned by trial by error to get to a point where you know your comfort zone? How do you approach this?
Love that question because we have been through 3 cycles,
Mhm.
and we've survived them. The first time that we ever lost money on a real estate deal was back in the early aughts. and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. It was our own money, but it was the most expensive piece of real estate we had bought to date. And it made us much better investors. So, one thing I love to do is to ask people that I might be working with, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in real estate?
Right.
And how did you handle it? Because I think that's quite telling. So we are very conservative. Um, you know, never fudge those numbers. Believe in the numbers. And if one little thing is off, if it's heritage building, for example, you better add some buffer in.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at it. Do your numbers in 3 sets. Your best case, your worst case, and realistic in the middle. And take a look at all 3 sets of numbers to give yourself that range so that you understand and maybe look at how would these numbers have to work so that we're at 0 every month with this thing, right? Because that has happened. Pay attention to what's happening. We have learned to be leading edge on this. And when you see a sniff that something is coming, I feel that one of the ways that we have stayed safer than others in this is we're not afraid to move quickly when you see something coming. So BC announced the short-term rental changes. We sold. We were done out of there for now. And we sold at a record price. Just weeks later, everything started to come down. And so we could have hung on to it and tried to pivot. We looked at all that, but I get very nervous when I hear people say, I'll never sell my real estate, because I will sell the dogs. This is an old sales guy strategy that, you look at your board every year and the bottom 20% there, so we do that every year. We take a look at each project, not just the returns, but the time, the effort that's going into it. So be conservative, abide by those rules on your due diligence and the numbers. Don't be afraid to take action. Yeah. Don't wait too long. When you're driving down the road, you're in bumper to bumper traffic and there's an opening and then all those cars start going and you're like, oh, I should go get in that lane. And you think about it and you think about it. Then you put your signal light on and you finally get in it. And all those cars have gotten in front of you and it's stopped.
Yeah.
But if you had gone at the beginning, you'd be at the off ramp. Yeah. So I think that's saved us a couple of times. Now, could we have weathered those storms? Absolutely. But the hope is that if you change course like that, you're going to find a better path forward on something else. So I think those have been really good. And don't forget that sometimes opportunity arrives on a whisper. So watch for the quiet opportunities. We're doing some work right now in a market where the contractor came to us. So all of a sudden we're handed this great contractor and we thought, that's always kind of a hard piece of the puzzle. Yeah. So why don't we go do some work here? Everything else looked good as we looked around it. So I think that's another thing. We first started with rent to owns years ago, and it was the same thing. Partner came to us. We liked the partner. We wanted to work with them. They said they were doing this strategy. We started doing them. And rent to own was a strategy I never thought we'd do. We always, it has that sort of greasy connotation. Once we got into it and understood that you're actually helping people attain home ownership, and we've got some beautiful stories as well. So these houses have gone to good homes. Right. Which, the Boydens love a good story like that. So I think those are probably the biggest tips. I think some of the stuff that's come more recently in the last couple of years is, people who got into real estate investing maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Let's talk about Ontario, Vancouver, where the market was going up double digits each year. They had never had a loss. And they just didn't believe it could happen. So believe it can happen is another good one.
We are in real estate winter.
Yes, yes. So people are seeing it now. For my husband and I, okay, we've been through this before. Now's the time where we start planning. Where do we want to go to? Keep the powder dry, start getting ourselves ready to go into acquisition mode again.
Yeah.
That's sort of what we're doing right now. And it's interesting. I was on a webcast today. This was not real estate related. This was pure business entrepreneurship. And, they were saying this is a time of uncertainty. Well, we've been living in a time of uncertainty the last 5 years.
Say so.
So we should all come out of this a little smarter, first of all, right? So we've got lots of time to plan. But I also think you want to be more selective. And, we are being more careful, closing the circle in a little tighter on who we work with. That's one of our biggest things is, who you work with matters. And so you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence on your market, on your strategy, on your partners, and on your investor pool. I've been talking a lot about risk profile and risk analysis for investors who are putting money into projects. As an operator, if you're doing land development, for example, and you understand, okay, here's our plan, but maybe it goes a year or two longer. You don't want people who need that money back before you're done.
Right.
So you need to be a little more careful, be a little more selective with who you work with there. Make sure that those are people who are seasoned investors, honestly, right? Make sure that they understand that the rest of their portfolio could change as well.
Yeah.
If I look back as we did some investments over the last few years, we always look each other in the eye and we think, okay, we're okay if this one goes long or wrong. What we didn't say is what happens if 7 or 8 of them go long or wrong and these people can't give us our money back, right? So I think, especially during times of uncertainty, let's remember those lessons. But certainly there is opportunity out there. There are a lot of people who, like us, are, we're having a ball doing what we're doing. But it's, we're rolling up our sleeves and we're getting into smaller, quicker projects so that timeline doesn't matter as much. We can get in and out before the market changes. We understand what we're doing. So I think you have to really look at what's going on around you. Pick according to your time, money, knowledge, opportunities, and partnerships, and pick the things that are going to give you the highest chance of success right now. Now is not the time to go into something because it seems fun, because everyone else is doing it, because it's the only thing that you see or know.
This is great advice, Deanna. Great advice. I've only got a small window left, but there's something I really want to ask you about, and that's this real power. Did I get it right? Tell me about this.
Yes. Real Power is a network that we created to empower female investors. So thank you for asking me about it. We have hundreds of members across Canada, and this group of ladies is absolutely incredible. There are young and old women who are just getting into real estate, right up to experienced people who have been in it for 20 some years. And as a group, we get together and we have very unique conversations around entrepreneurship and investing from the female perspective. And we have a space where all the women can use their voices, which is amazing. We absolutely love our male allies. This is just a space where we can talk about, we might talk about caring for children and aging parents together. We may talk about, societal demands on a woman, or we may talk about how to read blueprints.
Awesome.
So we're covering it all, but it's just a safe space for women. And so we hold events and we have a year-long mastermind. That's masked her mind.
Oh my.
Um, yeah, where
Covered.
we feature female speakers that are, the top of their industry. We're getting speakers, not that we're seeing at all that you normally see at real estate events, but I really try and find women who focus on the areas. Our four seasons are international and lifestyle investing, taxes and money, business operations and leveling up, and social media and marketing. So we hit all of those topics through the year with our speakers. And then we also have our open circle night, which is where the ladies come in and we may have a theme discussion. So, for example, we just talked about what was your biggest tax tip that you learned this year? And you can imagine this list. You get, 25, 30 ladies all giving the things that they learned from their accountant or, strategies that they've discovered. I think we could literally sell this list of tax tips every year.
Write a book, write a book.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think it's been really incredible. We often at our events have, usually Friday night it happens that someone comes up to me with tears in their eyes, and they say, "I didn't feel that I belonged until I got here, and I feel like I've truly found my sisters." And
I'm
so
so
that's
happy to hear
amazing.
this. This sounds awesome. It really does.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Very
been
nice.
great. And we do sometimes the information is just too great. So we call them girls, guys, and guests events. We do those every once in a while. We'll do one soon. This entrepreneurs as caregivers touched, resonated with a lot of us
Yeah.
who are caring for aging parents. So we're actually going to do one that's open to everybody as well. And within our community, we have some absolute experts on this topic, which was great. Yeah.
How long has Real Power been around?
6 years.
Years now. Nice.
It started on a whim. Let's see if a few of the girls want to go to the mountains, drink wine, and talk real estate. It was crazy. It was COVID. Things were shut down. We thought maybe we can get 15 women. Well, we had to shut it off at 50. And it was absolutely incredible. And these women, we just had, a case where one showed up. She's going to be living in one of her properties while she does renovations. She said, "Hey, anybody in Toronto got some extra furniture I can use?" And within hours, there was a vehicle full of furniture there. There was food brought in. It's really women pitching in together. They go on site visits at the events. We had one, the event I recently saw you at. There was a group of us there. That's another thing for a woman to go off to an event. Sometimes it's nice. They'll post in the group, "Hey, I'm going to this event." They're sharing hotel rooms, they're carpooling. It really, if a woman is single or if their husband doesn't participate, there's an added layer of support there that you just can't beat having some other experienced investors with you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Deanna,
yeah.
one
And
last question for you. And I like to ask this of all my guests, and it's always a surprise for me, the answer I get. What is your why? What is driving you forward? What goal? And how are you going to know when you reach it? How are you going to recognize it? I mean, you've been doing this now 20 years. I'm expecting the goal that you started with is different today than it was when you began, but I'd love to hear your story there. Tell me about this.
my why is simply to never live in snow again.
Awesome.
I'm sure you were expecting some grandiose,
Oh,
but it is literally that is my why right now. Yeah, that and our family's why is to leave the world a better place than we found it.
yeah.
And so we are, always blessed that this business gives us the opportunity to give back in various ways. Real Power is one of those examples. My husband is, the biggest supporter and the unpaid employee of it all. uh, but seeing investors, I just had a chance to be on site with some investors that I've been watching their journey over a period of 4 or 5 months, and they are literally blooming. They are flourishing. And so to think back to where we started, you're right, with a single wide trailer, Our dream literally was to own 2 townhomes so that we could give one to each of our sons on their wedding day, and then maybe have our own home paid off. So you never know what's going to pop up on your vision board as you grow. I certainly never would have imagined where this has brought us and the opportunities that we have that are presented to us and the lifestyle that we get to live, spending our time in 3 countries and creating amazing businesses. In the Caribbean, we get to help hire women down there to help us run that. That's a joy. So just understand that your why will shift as well. And to your point, Steve, what you can't even imagine what you'll be putting on your vision board next year, but it all boils down to not living in snow.
Well, I gotta say, I kind of have that on my own list. That's one of the reasons I live here in the valley. Although every once in a while, anyhow. Deanna, how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out and invest with you or learn more about real power or just say hello, where's the coffee? How would they do that?
Yes, yes. So on social media, I'm at Deanna Boyden.
Okay.
So reach out to me there, or you can send a note through real-power.ca is another great place to find us. And you can find information on our upcoming mastermind, and see some great pictures of a room full of smart women having a great time learning to be better business owners.
Any last
Yeah.
words?
I think follow your dreams, people. Follow that intuition. Listen to your gut. Do not limit yourself, and you can achieve whatever it is that you want. You're here listening, which is a step in the right direction. So just keep at it.
Oh, that's perfect, Deanna. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, please like it. If you're not subscribed, please adjust that. And if you really like it, share it with your friends. I'm sure they'd enjoy it too. Thank you very much, Deanna. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.